Last time we cheated the system with the candy box. Today we're going to do it again. But before we are going to do that, I'm going to make you an offer that you probably can't resist. So I'm making you a gift. And I'm going to make you this gift in the context of a lecture, in the context of a traditional lecture. So what we have in this lecture is, and I'm going to talk about the gift in a couple of seconds, you have typically two types of people in the room. You have, let's say, the authority, the number one in the room. So this is usually the professor. And you have the students in the room. Quite a big group of students. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to make them a gift. I'm going to make them a proposal, which means that they can get 49 points out of 100. 100 would be the perfect grade, and 49 out of 100 would be basically passing the class without having to do anything at all. So you would pass immediately if you want to, because you have to tell me as a group, and we will get back to that in a couple of seconds, that you want to do that. So 49 points out of 100 points. That sounds quite easy, but the problem is that this is going to trigger several things. So this is the offer that I'm going to make to the group of students. And what I'm doing here is I'm turning the system upside down by telling them, I offer you the chance, I'm giving you the gift to get these 49 points by telling me what kind of questions you would like to have in the exam. So I'm going to include the question that you tell me in your exam so that you can cheat the system, grab the 49 points and live happily ever after. And what I'm doing here is I'm turning this system upside down. So usually I'm the number one, the king of the classroom, and my way of manipulating the students is the risk for them to give them a bad grade. And by giving them 49 points, I'm stripping away all the power that I have. So the interesting thing here is that we're talking a lot about power. And you probably might think right now in this video, watching this video, that there must be a catch, that this is not true, that authorities don't do these type of things, and that universities usually are not run that way, or classes are not run that way. So we are talking about perceptions of authority. But we also, and this is the tricky part, we are facing the students with themselves. They look into the mirror and they have to talk about values, about beliefs, and they have to talk about social norms. So would it be okay to take these points, yes or no? And this is basically the decision that I'm asking them to take. The students now thinking about whether to take it or not to take it are faced with several things like economic realities and pressure. They usually have to take more than one class. The learning pressure is very, very high, and they have to finish their course of studies in an appropriate amount of time. So there's a lot of pressure that is probably forcing them to choose yes. And then someone would stand up and say, hey, who would be against that? And what we see now is peer pressure that is building up. And I'm asking them the question, imagine you are working in a company, in an organization, which the HTW as a university is, and the students are kind of the employees in the organization. So let's talk about HTW's mission. So what is the mission, and is the decision supporting this mission in a positive or probably in a negative way? One part of the HTW's mission, for example, is the quality of teaching. But at the same time, it is also transparency and openness. So is this exercise supporting the quality of teaching? yes or no, maybe in a positive or in a negative way. And this is where I am affected and where I'm affecting the whole system. And I tell the students, look, you have to take the decision, but there are some rules. And usually people say, where is the catch? And I tell them there is no catch. I really honestly mean it. So if I tell you I make you the gift, I'm really making you the gift. No catch at all, no strings attached. But there are some rules, like there are in everything in life. And the rule is the decision has to be unanimous. So if there is one person going against the decision and says, no, I don't want to do that, we're not going to do it. So you will not get the 49 points and you will have to write a regular exam. The idea is behind the offer and the decision, there is a lag of 14 weeks. 14 weeks because this is usually the duration of the semester. So I kick this off in the first session, and then afterwards in the last session we take this unanimous decision. And again, I talked about peer pressure in the beginning, and that someone would usually stand up and say, who would be against that? And we are talking about transparency, we are talking about openness, but at the same time we're talking about pressure and peer pressure. And I'm trying to remove the pressure from the group, from the individual student, to connect this again to the mission. So what we are going to do is we are going to take a vote and poll. But this vote is going to be hidden. So usually you don't know who had said yes and who had said no. And what happens if you announce that? There are a lot of things that will happen within the group, and we will talk about certain side effects in a couple of seconds as well. So suddenly the group talks about trust between the group members, between the group and the authority, and on various layers. We talk about pressure, like the group pressure, the peer pressure, and ethical or unethical behavior. So when I talked about certain effects that are going on within the group and when the students are faced with this decision, there are three layers basically that are being triggered. One is interpersonal. The other is intrapersonal, so within the person. Interpersonal between people, and the group. And this leads to several issues. So especially issues because people are usually not on the same page when it comes to values, beliefs, and social norms. And there are contradictions that come up pretty soon in the discussion. So let's take a look again at the economic realities and the pressure and talk about, is it an ethical decision to do that? Would it be ethical to say, yes, give me the points, I don't care? And we have certain things in the environment, in the systemic environment of the university that is influencing this discussion. We, for example, have certain rules that have to be applied in lectures, and it's called our exam regulation. On the other hand, we have freedom of teaching. So, is it legal? Probably it is. I think it is. But is it legit to do that? So in one way, if it's legal, you could cheat the system, but you would behave illegally, which you probably shouldn't do, of course. You become a gangster, and we too become partners in crime. Or is it legit, and is it a strategic thing to do? So now this is what they usually discuss. The next thing that we achieve, leaving the discussion aside for a couple of seconds, I talked about a power shift here, when I remove my power and give it to the group of students by asking them to decide whether they want to basically pass the exam immediately, yes or no. The same thing that happens is the hidden and unanimous decision. Imagine you have a group of students, and usually it goes with the majority. So that's how democracy works in certain ways. You could probably say the majority wins. So if 51% of the people are for something, the rest, the 49%, are unhappy with that. So what we're doing here is, again, we also do a power shift by giving the one individual the power over the group. So if one individual is unhappy with the group's behavior, he or she can completely change the system. This, of course, leads to a lot of issues and to a lot of conflicts with those who want to behave either unethically, and they would say, it is unethical, I'm not going to do that, or with those who have a strategic idea, and this person has another strategic idea. So you see there are a lot of things that are going on here. And let's move fast forward into time and talk about a potential ripple effect that the decision can have. Because usually people say no harm will be done because it will stay in the room. Of course, we have a skeleton in the closet together, but no one will ever hear. And that's an interesting thought. So we are going to cheat the system if we think that no one will hear and no harm will be done. But we talked about the HTW's mission and how this behavior is either supporting or contradicting the mission of the HTW. So from my point of view, there is a ripple effect in the future. And the ripple effect, and if we're talking about the future, let's take a look into the looking glass. You never know what's going to happen. And I think this ripple effect can be direct, and it can be indirect. And the ripple effect will happen in several constellations. For example, the impact onto the HTW. So what will people think about the HTW if you basically get your exam for free, so to speak? What do you think about employers? So if it would be public that at the HTW you would get grades for free, more or less, what would they think about the HTW and the people getting degrees from our university? That's going to be interesting if that ever would become public. But at the same time, there is also a ripple effect into the group, and it's a personal one for the individual students being faced with the tough decision, but also between individuals and the group. In particular, between the individual and the group, if they disagree based on their values and certain social norms. And the last thing that is being affected here by the ripple effect is the authority. It's the teaching professor. So the perceived number one is now in trouble with an individual, with the group, or maybe even worse, with the HTW as well. So we have a conflict here, and we have certain conflicts here, here, and on this area. So be careful if you make this offer, if you make this gift, because you probably know it. If you're making a gift, and this is what I call it, so I tell the people I'm making you a gift, but if you translate gift into German, and it's basically a German word, the word gift means, if you translate that back to English, poison. So what is it that I'm offering here? Is it a gift that you should take, or is it actually poison that you get? But again, Poison is not a bad thing at all. Some of the best medicine in the world is made of really strong poison. It just depends on the portion that you get. And now I'm wondering what kind of decision you would take. So pick your poison.